The Holy Gospel according to St. Luke. Jesus observes guests jockeying for position at the table. He uses the opportunity to teach his hearers to choose humility rather than self-exaltation. Jesus also makes an appeal for hosts to imitate God's gracious hospitality to those in need. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, give this person your place. And then in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteousness. Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord. Please be seated. Some of you will understand that perhaps today, and maybe you wonder with what I'm about to say, I think it might not be as connected. The transitions might be a little bit rough today. Some of you would say, boy, you must go through an awful lot of death and an awful lot of grief here, because sometimes, more often than not, you are disconnected in what you say. So with a little chuckle to that, the truth is, yes, there's been an awful lot of death, 44 deaths in the past 2 years, some of them very personal. So it makes it sometimes a little more difficult. And for those in the healthcare professions especially, you'll know that you would understand there's this secondary traumatic stress. It's like PTSD, but a secondary factor, compassion fatigue. And when your job is primarily providing care for others, when it is primarily doing and sitting and hearing, sometimes the heart becomes so overwhelmed and so full, there's no more to offer. That is not unusual. That is the case all of the time. In every class that I've had the privilege to teach when I'm working with healthcare students, primarily nurses working on their BSN, their Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, that's my biggest concern. And I'm watching in every paper they write that I am privileged to read, I'm watching for and looking for, where are they? How healthy are they? Because healers can become harmful. Healers can become tragically harmful when the self-care and other team care doesn't take place. Well, here at St. John's, there's been a boatload, right? My time with you has been a boatload of painful experiences, not only for me, but for you too. And together we share this need for, I think, perhaps a little bit of healing. So hopefully today you'll find some healing in the words that I will share with you. Expectations. It always boils down to expectations. I thought you were bringing the napkins. I thought you were setting the table. You know I've worked all day. You know that I've worked all day. Why isn't dinner on the table? Aren't the sheets ironed? Really? We seriously have to take them right out of the dryer and put them on the bed? Can't we iron them first so they're crisp and nice? As a little bit of a joke. But it's not so much of a joke, because it's as silly as that I oftentimes have couples in my office. It's silly as that. But is it silly? What if expectations were clear from the very beginning? You do this and I do this, but what about when the roles change? And what about the role of responsible conversation? What if that doesn't ever change? What if the communication struggles and limps, and you do make the connection by now, right? It's not just expectations of work, your coworkers, your superiors, those who you get to supervise if you're privileged and honored to be a supervisor. It's about making sure that there is clarity. Are we clear? Are we clear? Not just you got it? Yep, I got it. I don't have it at all. I have no idea what they want. Clarity of expectation. Relationships, home. How about our relationship with the school district? Well, I pay my taxes. The school district needs to do the job. What if we've asked the school district to do far more than teachers were ever and will ever be trained to be able to do? What if we've asked for more of them than we should expect of them? What if that falls back on us? What do we expect from our government? What do we expect from our neighbors? Well, don't they know that burning the trash, this is when I lived in New Tripoli, don't they know that burning the trash, especially in a day like today when the air is heavy and humid, it's going to linger, so we're going to be breathing in clouds of smoke all evening? I wonder what Jesus' expectations of the disciples were. I wonder what the disciples expected of Jesus. And I wonder if congregations enter into times such as this and ask those serious questions and wait for the response. Let me ratchet this now up to a significant level. You ready for this? And you are the audience, right? The other 350 who are rarely in the pews, they're not my audience. You are. Do you understand that? I want to make sure our expectations are clear. You're my audience. My audience isn't just for those who are written on a list of paper. I'm looking for people who are wanting to be my expectation, disciples of Jesus Christ, flawed, failures, but forgiven. No. Flawed, failures, and forgiven. Big difference. Go to a church where you're flawed and failed, but you can be forgiven. No. And you are forgiven. That might be the most significant thing that I've heard here from a few people throughout my time. People have said, you know, there is this subtle twist, but it's huge. You're not focusing on fake grace, cheap grace, because every church talks about grace. You're talking about the real deal, mercy, not getting what you deserve. Everyone's hopeful. It's kind of like the Cracker Jacks box, right? Or the cereal box. I remember when the groceries would come home and my mother had, remember those red and green and yellow bowls, those kind of glass, milky white bowls? And I'd get the big bowl out and I'd be allowed to climb up on top of the chair and open up the box with some help and then pour it in because I didn't care about the cereal. I just wanted the prize. Oftentimes, that's how we treat Christianity, right? We just want the prize, but we don't want to participate in the meal that's being served. And at the supper that God serves us, there is much mercy needed because we are flawed. We are flawed. Expectations. Let me gently take it to the next level. After my departure at some point, you're going to interview your next pastor candidate. And I suspect your pastoral candidates will be good. That the synod office in consultation with you, they will be good. Because they know that this is a place filled with hope and a future, we hope. And that pastor will be wise enough to ask questions. When Pastor Mockermer was with you, what was your expectation of how he would care for people? And that pastor will sit with you and mine every ounce of you to gain a clear expectation, to be perfectly clear what the expectations are. and not to listen for the typical answers. Well, we expect them to take care of the sick and the dying. Because the numbers do make a difference. I marvel. Please look at my face. If I can be so bold as to ask you to look at my face, I marvel at the sheer numbers of pastoral contacts that Pastor Fry had in his time with you, numbering over 4,000 on average a year as recorded in your books. 4,000 contacts in a year. Pastoral contacts, pastoral visits. I don't know how he did it, but I can see why Pastor Fry should be a statue higher than our steeple, because there is no way I could ever live up to that expectation. I might not even be able to name every single person in our congregation, but I am going to ask you in September or October to have a day. You know when you bring a guest to church Sundays or bring a visitor to church Sundays? I'm going to bring people to church so I can name you by name Sundays. Because I want you to know that I probably can actually name you by name, all of you. That means no difference to me. What matters to me is that you know the name of Jesus and you know the works of Jesus and the grace and mercy offered by Jesus. And that's the only thing I want you to remember about my time with you here at St. John's. I don't know his name, but all he wanted was for us to know about Jesus and to know Jesus intimately and personally, because that expectation was his from before he even came here. Know that and know that only. Know that a disciple of Jesus Christ makes more disciples of Jesus Christ. Bottom line, you are a disciple of Jesus if you make more disciples. If you do not make more disciples, you are not effective in your disciple making. But the call of this pastor is to offer you an opportunity to help you to make disciples. Committed disciples of Jesus are busy growing the church by sharing the gospel message. Well, what's the gospel message in a nutshell? Saving grace in Jesus Christ. At all costs. Protect the faithful consumers and idlers who do pretty much nothing, but they have the power to run off those who want to be faithful in being unfaithful. That's what most churches are. Billy Graham actually said it. How many of you are fans of Billy Graham? Man, I love that Billy Graham was a child of God that did great things, but I've told you before, I've listened to Billy Graham. I was there in Boston when it happened, and I said to the guy beside me, when are they going to get Billy Graham on? Because this guy's really bad. I said that. And he said, Bob, that's Billy Graham. It was bad. It was just so bad. And then hundreds and hundreds of people went forward to say yes to wanting to be a child seeking a relationship with God. What I'm looking for, my expectations are that every person in this church is a minister, that everyone here is a minister of the gospel, that everyone here learns how to provide care for each other, that no one is indispensable, that paid, compensated staff exist for one reason and one reason only, to primarily help people grow, to be disciple makers, that the compensated staff are mentors and teachers so that you know how to be a faithful disciple, and a faithful disciple grows other disciples. Most people probably aren't looking for that kind of a church. And most of your members probably would go crazy if that was the mission of the pastor. Because how long does it take to teach somebody how to grow disciples? Doesn't take long. If they're set ablaze with the Holy Spirit to do that, they'll do it. And all leaders of this congregation, everyone committed to serving one another. For such a culture to exist, for such a culture to be developed here at St. John's, all of us who are paid by you to do our jobs, again, what's the expectation of our job, must have a different understanding of ministry. The roles of who we are as compensated staff and the role that you play in the congregation. This is Luke 14. Flip it. In that day, status was critical. The person that got to sit at the head of the table, the person in the second chair, the person in the third chair, that hierarchy was really important. Really important. And Jesus says, flip it. Go the other way. How many times have you heard me say, look the other direction? The answer is the other direction. In short, it means Becky, Shannon, Bob, Amy, all of us have to stop being the doers, and we have to work together. And that starts, you know how that starts? When a pastor can get the heck out of the way. Get out of the way, be a teacher, but get out of the way so that people can move through. There are gifts and skills that are being wasted in this congregation because I'm in your way, or Becky's in your way, or Shannon is in your way, or Amy, or any of our preschool staff. It's a way of growth. It's a way to live. When people are schooled in the gospel, when you know the gospel message, you will see that there is no other way, because to do it any other way, to do it the way we've always done it, is to betray the gospel. Because the role of laity, the joy that they can have in serving God, using their spiritual gifts, is taken away from them if we don't cut them loose and get out of their way. Is there any possibility I can hear an honest and authentic amen? Amen. There really is something serious to this. Olivia, I got to meet you. Do you mind? This is a little embarrassing, maybe perhaps not for me, but maybe for you. Would you mind standing? And even if you stand, I'm guessing that Mr. Omler is still going to probably have to get a ladder for you so that people can see you. This young lady was a part of our retreat down to Washington, D.C. Now, she happens to have some connected relationships with the folks in the congregation. I'm still able to say that you're the girlfriend to Miles, and Miles is the boyfriend, and God, what a, oh my, right? I'm just joking. But I'm saying this publicly. When you're ready for your first job and you don't want to work for mom and dad at the pharmacy or whatever, I'm offering you a job. I'm offering you a job to create youth activities here at St. John's. I'm offering you the job. Do you have insight into why you are being offered that right now in front of everyone? Mr. Omler, do you have insight into how or why?
I think it's because Olivia's a very caring person.
Very caring person, Mike Omler just said. She is. She is empathetic, she is compassionate, and she has something that I admire and respect tremendously. She is curious. I love being around people who are curious because they are learners. They are learners. Now, she doesn't go to Boyertown School District. That's another bonus, right? She's an outsider. But when you're ready, and I hope you're ready this week, let's have the conversation. Because I need a youth program and I need a person in your place to do it. And you have some people that you would have to call. You'd have to call Megan Coots, because she was your age. Did you just make the sound I think you just made? Megan Coots, at 20, knew more how to lead youth than most pastors in the United States. Heather Geist was a little kid like you and a terror in my confirmation class. And she is now very likely one of the people that would perform surgery on you at Lehigh Valley Hospital, because she is in her final year. She's already an MD. She's just wrapping up her surgery credentials. Olivia, I choose you. Ball's in your court. In our congregation, we are privileged to be surrounded. Look around in this room. We may do things differently than one another. We may think differently than one another. And that's what I'm also trying to do. I'm trying to help us be great at disagreement. Let's be great at disagreement. Let's be good doers with disagreement. It's a skill set. How many of you would say that you disagree with your spouse on at least one thing? And that's supposedly the most important relationship of all. How many of you would say, well, they're just really thick-headed and they can't learn? How many of you would say, I'm thick-headed and I can't figure out what she wants? Not many. How many of you would do it gratuitously and humorously, but not authentically? We want to be great at our disagreements. We want to be a congregation that can talk about government and politics and human sexuality and disdain for onions. We want to be a congregation, do we not? Because it's in the wonderful, marvelous diversity that you find at the table that Jesus is talking about. The table our Lord is talking about is the one with the blind, the one with the lame, the poor and the crippled. Which one of our hearts is not crippled? Which one of our lives and our spirit is not lame? Which one of us can ever say, we have eyes to see God at work? No one, when Lorraine Dickey is buried and her life is celebrated, is going to talk about her credentials. Air Force Academy graduate, medical school, PhD, MBA, the best I've ever seen in palliative care. No one's going to talk about that. You know what they're going to talk about? Squeege. It's a hug. It's a way to love. Because she was an amazing child of God who knew how to love people in their brokenness, because she was broken and she understood it. Why do we have 2 services, I've heard people say? If we do that, we won't be able to get to know everybody. Precisely. You don't want to know everybody. Think it through with me. It's all about math. If you know everyone in the church, that means you're averaging probably about 125 people, because most of us can only remember about 105. And if you want me to know 1,000 names versus know 100 of you, well, so what? Aiden, you are his parents. Would you say that I know Aiden more than his name? Would you say that, holy mackerel, can you imagine? Because you two are never in the midst of our conversations. And in the middle of moving furniture, deck furniture, back to the patio and moving things around, that child of yours, we had amazing conversations and we were so different. And yet in the difference, doing the difference well, we were almost the same. How's he doing? Is he home? Oh, mom's homesick. Really? Oh, and he wrote me and said, I'm never going home again. I'm just joking. I just wanted you to see me as a compassionate pastor. Oh my. This is not the time of a month in August to talk to moms in particular. Yeah. If you're planning on growing this congregation, if you are planning on growing it, then you'll never know everyone. And that's a good thing. And you'll get over when you say to somebody, if you're doing greeting and ushering properly, hey, great to have you here. And then the person responds by saying, I've been going here for 45 years. Yeah, but I only see you once or twice a year. But we don't want to say that, right? Because we want to be nice. Oh, do you have any idea how I don't like nice? I love loving, caring, authentic, but nice for the sake of being nice makes me, I love this text, and I got to tell you, would I rather sit with the presidents of the universities, the deans of a college? Would I rather sit with the governors, the representatives, or would I rather sit with the street people? Well, I like them both. I'm not picking one over the other. I don't care if you are wealthy. I don't care where you live. I don't care how much you can give to this congregation. I do care about your spiritual gifts, you identifying them and using them to the glory of God. I do care about where your heart is broken, where your mind is shattered, where your life is torn in depression. I care about that, and I care enough to say, we, the team, will be builders of each other. Those are my expectations. I have no idea if we're truly on the same page. I hope we are, because if we are, look out. This church will grow. It will grow deeper, not larger. It will grow more serious with the issues that our world requires us, needs us to address, not superficial and superfluous. We'll go beyond the pettiness of the small mind and the small thinking, and we'll move beyond to the most important, and that is learning the heart of Jesus, who said, stop worrying about your position at the table. Be more concerned about putting the right people at the table. One last thing. Humility is a tricky one, and I've got my behind kicked here, but let me tell you how it happened. I never had to defend myself or protect my heart self or my experience any place I've ever worked. Never. It was self-evident. Humility is knowing that your gift comes from God. Humility is not saying you're not good at something. And I know many of you grew up in families that it's almost disdainful to say, you know what? I'm proud of myself because I'm doing pretty good about this. If the pride is a hindrance, if the pride is a stumbling block, that's one thing. But if you're just happy celebrating the gifts and skills you have, can you imagine someone saying, I got a 4.0 from Harvard University, and yeah, I did okay. That's not humility, that's stupidity. And everybody can read right through it. Humility is this. It's saying, I did great, and I want to do great work. I'm not talking about myself, by the way. I'm not the one that got the 4.0 from Harvard. But you know what happens when you're so tired and you're wounded and your ego? I'm going to need you with me? I'm going to need you to check me on where my heart is right now because you have the skill set to do it and you know who I am a bit. Here's what happens when someone's strengths are attacked or put in question for a lengthy period of time. You can lose your sense of self, and you start protecting and defending. And you start talking about your resume, and you start talking about the things that you've done because you hunger so desperately for people to have what you have to offer. You hunger for their sake. So if you've thought me to be a pompous, pious, narcissistic son of a gun, then you have this. I know I lost my sense of self with you. I know my sense of who I am and what I want to offer you has been challenged more than any place ever in my life. So if you forgive me for anything, forgive me for knowing that I have something to offer you. And I want to. And that I am very keenly aware of what happens when I'm wiped.